You think you want closure. You think you want an explanation. But what you are really asking for is permission to stop hurting, and that is the trap. Because the moment you beg the person who betrayed you to explain themselves, you hand them the authority to define your pain. You make them the judge of what happened to you. You make them the keeper of your peace. They betrayed you once. Now you are asking them to rescue you from the wound they created. Let's say this clearly. Most people who betray you will never give you a real explanation. Not because they forgot, not because they are confused, not because they need time. They will not explain themselves because an honest explanation would require something they do not have the courage for: self-confrontation. To explain betrayal truthfully, they would have to look directly at their own envy, their insecurity, their cowardice, their need for control, their lack of character. And most people are not built for that kind of mirror. This is why seeking closure becomes psychological self-sabotage. You replay the conversation in your head. You imagine the perfect question. You think, if they would just tell me why, I could finally move on. No. If they were capable of giving you the truth, they probably would not have betrayed you in the first place. The betrayal was the explanation. Their behavior was the confession. Their choice was the clarity. You are waiting for language to confirm what action has already revealed. The first reason they will never explain themselves is simple. Their ego cannot survive the truth. A real explanation would sound like this: I felt small next to you. I was threatened by your integrity. I wanted what you gave me, but I did not want to become the kind of person worthy of it. I chose comfort over character. I wanted the reward without the responsibility. But almost nobody says that. Instead, the ego protects itself. It rewrites the story. It edits reality. It turns your pain into their excuse. So they say things like, you're too sensitive, you're overthinking it, it just happened, it wasn't that deep, you made me do it. Notice what is happening. They are not explaining, they are relocating blame. Because the ego would rather distort reality than accept guilt. It would rather make you doubt your perception than admit moral failure. That is why betrayal is so disorienting. You are not just dealing with deception, you are dealing with someone actively protecting their self-image at your expense. This is the part most people never understand. You are trying to have a truth-based conversation with a person whose entire psychological system is organized around avoiding the truth. That will never work. You cannot negotiate honesty out of someone who survives through denial. You cannot extract accountability from someone whose identity depends on feeling innocent. So you keep knocking on a locked door and calling it hope. The second reason they cannot explain themselves is even darker. Some people genuinely do not know why they do what they do. They live from impulse, from appetite, from wounded patterns they have never examined. They betray, then rationalize, then move on. Not because they are deep masterminds, but because they are psychologically fragmented. This is where shadow work becomes necessary. Carl Jung called the shadow the part of the self a person refuses to see. The rejected motives, the hidden aggression, the greed, the envy, the weakness beneath the performance. A mature person can face that shadow. They can say, yes, that ugliness exists in me, and I am responsible for it. But an immature person cannot do this. They split themselves in half. Everything noble belongs to the image they present. Everything ugly gets projected outward, onto you, onto circumstance, onto stress, onto miscommunication, onto timing, onto anything except themselves. So when you ask them, why did you do it? You assume there is a clean, conscious answer waiting to be spoken. Often there isn't. There is only impulse. There is only unexamined hunger. There is only a person being run by parts of themselves they refuse to know. And if a person cannot face their own shadow, they cannot give you truth. They can only give you performance. The third reason they won't explain themselves is because some people have reduced relationships to utility. To them, human beings are not sacred. They are useful. Useful for validation, useful for status, useful for comfort, useful for access. Useful until they become inconvenient. And when people operate at that level, betrayal does not feel like betrayal to them. It feels efficient. They call it being realistic. They call it protecting themselves. They call it doing what they had to do. But stripped of the language, it is this. They benefited from your trust, then discarded the cost. This is why some betrayals are followed by silence, or indifference, or that cold sentence people use when they want to sound mature while avoiding conscience. It's just business. It's not personal. I had to do what was best for me. Listen carefully. Anything that requires the destruction of trust and then asks to be excused as strategy is not strength. It is moral laziness wearing the costume of pragmatism. Now here is the turning point. The moment you keep demanding an explanation, you remain psychologically tied to the betrayer. You are still orbiting them, still waiting, still asking them to complete a sentence inside you. That is not closure. That is dependency in disguise. Power begins the moment you stop asking the wound to explain the knife. True closure is not an apology received. It is access removed. It is the decision that their silence will no longer govern your nervous system. Their confusion will no longer become your homework. Their character failure will no longer become your identity crisis. Closure is not when they finally admit what they did. Closure is when you no longer require confession from the guilty to trust what you lived through. That is power. Not revenge, not bitterness, not numbness, just power. Clean, quiet, final. So how do you actually close this chapter without speaking to them? You do it in 4 movements. First, name the truth without softening it. Write down exactly what happened. Not the version your hope prefers, the version your body already knows. Second, separate their action from your worth. Their betrayal revealed their structure, not your value. The wound says, I was harmed. It does not say, I am unworthy. Third, study the bond honestly. What did you ignore? What did you excuse? Where did your need for connection override your perception? This is not self-blame. This is self-recovery. And fourth, remove access. Not just physically, internally. Stop rehearsing conversations you will never have. Stop building imaginary courtrooms where they finally tell the truth. Stop giving free rent to someone who paid for nothing but damage. This is where individuation begins. Individuation is the process of becoming whole, of becoming self-contained, of no longer collapsing because someone outside you chose disorder. It does not mean betrayal stops hurting. It means betrayal stops defining you. You stop begging the external world to stabilize your inner one. You become less naive, but not less human. Less available to manipulation, but more available to truth. You stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start asking, "What in me is now ready to become stronger, clearer, and less divided?" That is the deeper gift hidden inside the rupture, not the betrayal itself. Never romanticize that, but the forced encounter with your own unfinished self. So if you are still waiting for an explanation, hear this carefully. Their silence is not your sentence. Their avoidance is not your confusion. Their inability to face themselves is not proof that you are hard to love. Some people will betray you and never explain it, because explanation would require depth. And depth is exactly what they spend their lives avoiding. Let that be the last thing you learn from them. Do not wait for their honesty to begin your healing. Do not wait for their guilt to validate your reality. Do not wait for the betrayer to become noble enough to give you peace. Walk away, close the gate, and become someone who no longer needs answers from the people who abandoned their own soul long before they abandoned you. Before you leave, I want you to answer this in the comments. What truth did you finally have to accept about someone once you stopped waiting for their explanation? Not the story you wished were true, the truth. If this spoke to something you have been carrying in silence, subscribe. Because this channel is for people who are done chasing illusions and ready to become whole.